you have to be very accessible. You have to ensure that these younger lawyers on your team know that it's not an inconvenience for them to text you, for them to say, can we get on the phone right now?
They call me all the time and they say, sorry to call you. And I'm like, we're talking about work. You don't need to apologize. It is easy for me to do my job from home when I'm not in court, and more convenient for me to do my job from home when I'm not in court. But I learned because I could walk down the hall and ask Mike a question. And I learned because I could walk next door and ask my colleague a question. And it's important to be able to do that. We need to make sacrifices and do things that are less convenient and less desirable for ourselves, perhaps, so that they get adequate experience.
I would not have been able to achieve what I achieved without an excellent partner. And we all know as lawyers how important it is to have a good partner. But, not just a law partner, but my life partner. Well, you know this. You live this. And if I hadn't, in the absence of that, I never would have achieved what I've achieved.
Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code focuses on legal issues and notable practitioners, distilling wisdom so we all achieve the best results for our clients. I'm Miles Cooper, and I'm very excited for this conversation with employment defense world's power couple, Mollie Burks and Michael Laurenson. Both have decades at Gordon Rees Scully Mansukhani, each establishing themselves in their own ways. Mollie rose from the tiny town of Tuolumne in California's Gold Country to become co-managing partner for Gordon Rees's Northern California region, developing a reputation as a go-to resource for employers with complex wage and hour and Private Attorney General Act concerns. Mike served in the U.S. Navy during the first Persian Gulf War. Now in his third decade at Gordon Rees, he's the person to see when reputational employment litigation takes one to trial, defending Thomas Keller in the French Laundry to a successful defense verdict against a pregnancy discrimination suit with challenging evidence. The two met and married as partners at Gordon Rees, having worked on cases together, and share their insights on running two busy practices while raising 4 children together. So sit back and enjoy this fascinating exploration of their shared work and lives. Welcome to the show, Mollie, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
We're happy to be here.
Well, I'm very excited. As I said before we started, this is the first time we've had 2 guests live at the same time. So it's going to be a test for me in terms of just kind of, handling the conversation. So as we go forward, I'd love to hear a little bit about both of your backgrounds, and I'm not sure which one of you wants to start in terms of how you grew up and how you found yourself in the law.
Her story's more interesting, so why don't we start with her?
Okay.
I am a California native. I grew up in a very small town in Tuolumne County, actually the town of Tuolumne, Tuolumne City. It's not really a city at all. And there's no lawyers in my family. I come from a very modest working class family that had been in that area for a very long time. My great-great-grandfather came over the Sonora Pass in a covered wagon.
Wow.
One of the first groups to traverse that pass. And
has a mountain named after him.
Yeah.
What's the mountain?
Duckwall Mountain.
Okay.
Which sits right above Tuolumne as you drive into the town. And I think I was 4 years old and somebody said, "You really like to argue a lot, Mollie. You should be a lawyer when you grow up." And somehow that stuck. And so I went to UC Irvine. I graduated. I didn't immediately go to law school at that point. I got a job working for a lawyer who represented children who were dependents of the court in Orange County. He was actually one of the first lawyers to do that kind of work. And he spoke before Congress. He was very well.
What was his name?
Harold Laflamme.
Okay.
And I went to work for his office. And at some point, I remember speaking with Harold about maybe going into public policy. Maybe I would go to graduate school and go into public policy because I was very interested in legal issues impacting kids who were dependents of the court. And he said, you should just go to law school. You should just go to law school at night, and it'll be a much better degree for you to have, more, versatile. You'll have more options, and you can keep working for me. Go to Western State. So I went to law school at night, and I continued to work for the law offices of Harold LaFlamme. And then I got to law school, and I loved it. I loved trial practice. I did the advanced trial practice class, and I loved civil procedure. I just sort of loved everything about it. And at some point, I decided that I needed to try civil practice. And that's pretty much how I got to where I am today.
Well, I'm going to put a pin in it there and turn to Mike in terms of the path to law school, and then we'll come back to your professional advancement, if that works.
Sure.
After graduating from USF Law, just to start there and work back, and being on the board of governors for a couple of years there, and always coming back and talking to the students, they want to know how you became a lawyer. And so that caused me to do a lot of thinking. And it wasn't till I came to that point in my life, pretty late in my life, where I realized my grandfather was a circuit preacher. Both my parents were public school teachers. And I became a trial attorney, and it's really all the same job, just in different places. It's all about just being comfortable on your feet in front of people and storytelling, really. I always had that, from childhood. I was always in church and youth group up front of the church and leading things and talking. And for a while, my church wanted me to be a minister, but that didn't seem quite right. But I kind of always knew I was going to end up on my feet in front of people talking, and law seemed like the natural way to do that. So I did Navy ROTC at University of Virginia, and I had to do 4 years in the Navy. And I started to I got trained to be on the side legal officer in the Navy, to kind of start to work on that. And then I had a choice to make when it was time to get out of the Navy, whether I wanted to, go into the JAG Corps or just get out and become a regular old lawyer. And things just worked out with the Navy and what I was wanting to do, that it just seemed like the right thing to do to get out of the Navy. And I moved from San Diego up to San Francisco and started at USF Law, and loved it, obviously, and did all the moot court stuff. And that was clearly my thing. And I wanted to be in a practice where I could be in court, but criminal law just never spoke to me. And also talking to the students, I've always felt like it's either, it's like either for you or it isn't. It's hard to explain why. It didn't appeal to me to do either, DA or public defender. It just didn't appeal to me. So I knew I wanted to do civil. I just looked for a small defense firm where I could get into court. And Gordon Rees had that reputation at the time, and I was lucky to find a job there, and been there coming up on 30 years now.
From a small defense firm to all 50 states.
Yeah, we were 85-ish attorneys at the time I started 30 years ago, and now we're 85-ish offices in all 50 states. So it's been quite a wild ride.
Yeah.
With over 1,600 lawyers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of growth.
A lot of growth, an extraordinary amount of growth. And the funniest thing is, if you'd asked Stu Gordon and Don Rees back when I joined the firm, they would have told you it had already exceeded their wildest imaginations. I mean, Stu and Don and Gary Zacher started the firm, and they had built it to a 85-person firm in San Francisco with a very good reputation, a lot of great attorneys. And I would clearly they would have been happy just quitting there, but it just kept going, just kept going. And Stu just retired last year.
Wow. Oh, I didn't realize that part.
Yeah. Don passed away a couple of years ago, and Stu just retired last year.
Because I did some homework, and I want to make sure that people are the best advocates for themselves in terms of their bio, I don't want to overlook your service in the Persian Gulf, because that was one thing I was expecting to hear from your Navy piece that I didn't. So
I was heading too fast towards my attorney.
Yeah. So you had 2 tours?
2 tours in the Gulf. The first during the Persian Gulf War, the first Persian Gulf War that was the 48-hour one. We were on a regular deployment in the Philippines and got sent over to the Gulf and were there for 120 days or so, constantly at sea. And were there when, we invaded Iraq, and I was on an amphibious ship. We were the distraction force that was to make Saddam think we were coming ashore in Kuwait. Amphibious ship has a bunch of Marines on it and all their equipment and all their hovercraft and things like that. And so we acted like we were landing in Kuwait. And while everybody else came in through the back door, and as we know, that one was over in 24 hours or something. But it was another month or so that we were there. And then, you got to go all the way back to the Philippines. And so we came up, I was deployed for like 18 months. And when you have a deployment like that, you're supposed to get a little more time off. But within a couple months, it was announced that we were going back because there was an important mission to maintain the presence. So 6 months later, we were back. But the benefit was the first time I went over there, I went all the way over there, I don't know, tens of 20,000 miles or something, from San Diego to there and back. And the water 14 miles off of Kuwait looks just like the water 14 miles off of San Diego. So you don't get that much experience of being in a foreign place or being in Kuwait. And we, of course, did not go ashore. So a year later, when we ended up back there and the war was over, it was nice because we were allowed to go ashore, and they took us on tours, and we saw the highway to hell or whatever, where we, they were all evacuating. And so it was nice to get to in the minarets with all the holes and things like that. We saw it a year later. So I was in the Gulf for a couple of months, and it was a pretty scary place. Saddam used at that time a lot of old World War II tethered mines that would break free and float around the Gulf. And so, we would sweep channels in these minefields, and that's all well and good if you stayed in the swept channel, but then a mine would break loose, and so they're just floating around the Gulf. And from a couple miles away, you don't know whether it's an oil barrel or a mine or a dead sheep, which the sheep fall off the sheep carriers and bob around. And so there's bobbing sheep, there's bobbing oil barrels, and there's bobbing mines.
One can ruin your day.
Two would be okay to hit, and the third you don't want to hit.
Yeah.
So you're, ever vigilant while you're over there, just because you don't want your return home delayed. If you're on a Navy ship and you hit a mine, probably no one's gonna die. Probably, certainly not me up on the bridge wing. I wouldn't die, but there'd be a big hole blown in your ship, and those tend to take 9 months or so to fix. And nobody wanted to spend 9 months over there. So you're like, I'll be darned if we're gonna hit something floating around in the Gulf.
The things one does not think of when one is.
Yeah, the floating sheep.
Yeah.
They get rigor mortis too. So they just bob around with their forelegs so you can see them up close, but from a distance, it's just something bobbing in the water.
There's a dad joke somewhere in there.
Right, rigor mortis.
I was thinking Bob, but swinging back to you, Mollie. So when we left, you had decided civil might be the right fit for you. You're in Southern California. Can you tell us a little bit about your path there?
Sure. So I was entering my last year of law school. I went at night, so it took me 4 years. It's in a 4-year program. And I got a clerking position at a boutique firm in downtown Los Angeles, a litigation firm. They did a lot of sports and entertainment. So one of our main clients was the Niederlander family, who they run, they still book a number of the Broadway venues in New York. And they also were the exclusive bookers for the Greek Theater, Staples Center. They did shows at the Hollywood Bowl, at the Santa Barbara Bowl. And so one of the perks was for an associate, like, the other associates and it would be a Thursday afternoon, and there's seats available at the Greek to see the Strokes tonight.
Oh, wow. Really
interesting shows. And for some musical acts that I wouldn't have necessarily thought to go and see, I had the opportunity to see them. And we'd get to go to the Redwood Room, which is, where the performers and their entourage hangs out before and after the show. It was really a fun thing. So I worked there for about a year and a half. I clerked there first, and then I took the bar and passed the bar, and they offered me a job as an associate. And I worked there for almost 2 years. One of my very good friends at the firm was a paralegal, and she kept encouraging me to meet with her husband, who is a partner still at Gordon Rees. And finally, I went to lunch with him, and he hired me away to Gordon Rees. And I've been there ever since. I just celebrated my 21st anniversary at the firm. So I've been at Gordon Rees for 21 years. Started out as a baby associate, and I've held every attorney role there is. I'm now an equity partner, and was just recently promoted to Northern California office managing partner. That's a job I'll take on officially February 1st, and I'm really excited about that.
But you got to put in a plug for the unnamed partner who hired you and became your mentor and taught you everything you know about what to do in a courtroom, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our partner, Steve Ronk, is the lawyer I had lunch with, my friend Madeline's husband. And he is a very important part of my life. He took me to trial as a third year, and he and I tried maybe 6 cases together. And I owe him a debt of gratitude for everything I know how to do in the courtroom.
That's, I think, an important point. That before we started, we were talking a little bit about associates now, and you told me a story about how one of your associates had been around for 5 years and had never argued a motion in person in court. And I bring this up from the perspective of mentoring. The mentoring you received, both of you, I presume.
Yes.
The importance of mentoring that you received, and then how do you bring that forward right now in a world where we're very dispersed?
It's really tough. I was lucky enough to get the only job offer I got from Mike Lucy, who at the time was doing some asbestos work, had Bendix Brakes as a client. So during my first year as an associate, I got to take 50 plaintiffs' depots.
Wow.
I was, taking the depots of very ill plaintiffs in their bedrooms because they couldn't be deposed anyplace else. I mean, it was a great experience. Mike told me, and that was people are probably familiar with that, the asbestos world. I mean, a lot of people are contract attorneys. They only care about their client. They have their 10 questions to exclude their client from the case. And so you would go to a plaintiff's, Mike told me, you're going to go to the plaintiff's deposition, and there's going to be 40 people sitting around the wall waiting for their turn to ask their 10 questions. And the chair across from the plaintiff is going to be empty, and you're going to sit in that chair. And I did. And so, asbestos work ain't great, but I took 50 depots my first year as an attorney, and then expert depots as well. Expert, the medicine's a big issue. And so that experience was priceless. And as the firm had to grow and evolve, and Mike Lucy became the first managing partner after Stu Gordon, and clients wanted experts, we evolved into practice groups, and Mike became the head of the employment practice group, and I became an employment attorney. It was the single greatest thing that ever happened to me. And we had at the time Stanford and UC as clients, and they were difficult defendants. People, if you sued UC and Stanford, you were probably going to have a fight on your hands, and might end up at trial, because they tried cases back then. And so, I got to try a lot of cases, and he let me do stuff. And so by the time I was a fifth year attorney, he was letting me try a case on my own. And, that kind of mentoring is super important. And we've been struggling with doing that now, because it's it's hard. We're torn. She's less torn. She's better at it. I'm torn because I'm at the point in my career, as we were talking about, where I can do my job from home. I can do my job from anywhere. I have all these established relationships that are easy to maintain now because I've known these people for so long. So it is easy for me to do my job from home when I'm not in court, and more convenient for me to do my job from home when I'm not in court. But I learned because I could walk down the hall and ask Mike a question. And I learned because I could walk next door and ask my colleague a question. And it's important to be able to do that. And it's one thing if they're all sitting in our wonderful San Francisco office now with each other, but they still need us there in order to have the full experience. So we need to make sacrifices and do things that are less convenient and less desirable for ourselves, perhaps, so that they get adequate experience. And like I said, Mollie's much better at it than I am.
You have to be very accessible. You have to ensure that these younger lawyers on your team know that it's not an inconvenience for them to text you, for them to say, can we get on the phone right now?
They call me all the time and they say, sorry to call you. And I'm like, we're talking about work. You don't need to apologize.
Right. And it does make it makes it more challenging. It adds a level of difficulty.
I'm curious what steps or tools, techniques you, Mollie, have found that resonates with younger lawyers where you are more accessible.
I tell everyone in our very first meeting together, this is my cell phone. Text me. I am a very good texter. I have teenage children. I know how to text. I think that younger people are more comfortable texting than they are picking up the phone if they have a burning question. And I want them to know that if we're not in the same office and you can't just come down and knock on my door, walk in my office and ask me that question, that text is how we're going to have those kinds of communications. And no question is too small.
The other thing you do that's key is your check-ins.
Routine
check-ins on all your cases.
I do video conference check-ins with, one-on-ones weekly with my team. And
in other words, some people like me, you might just talk to them when something needs doing, but she has routine check-ins with everybody weekly. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
How large is your team?
I have 8 lawyers that work almost exclusively on my clients, cases. We have a large employment group though in San Francisco, and so we have plenty of associates who work with many partners. But I have about 8 people that are pretty much dedicated to my work right now.
the managing partner side of things, what does that mean for your work going forward in terms of having an active trial practice and mentoring and now adding on this? What does that look like?
Can't wait to see. She starts in February.
Fortunately, we have a really good sort of structure, right? So my role will be the managing partner of all 6 of our Northern California offices, but we have office managing partners for each of those offices. So there's not just one person who has to field all of these questions and deal with these issues. But it's still going to be, I've been doing my on-the-job training. It's still going to take a great deal of time that I'll have to devote to this. And the way that I'm conceptualizing it is that this is a client. This is a new, big, important client. And we all have lots of clients, and we know what that's like to sort of readjust and reprioritize. And I have a couple of senior folks on my team who are partners who will take a more active role in managing some of my client relationships so that I can, readjust that time.
But she already works from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. So the solution is not going to be just adding 2 more hours of work. There aren't any more hours of work to add. So she's going to have to step back from her litigation practice a little. And I don't think she knows yet how to do that and what that's going to look like and how to achieve that. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
It's a good year to become an empty nester.
Exactly.
Thank goodness. Yeah. She's going to use up every one of those hours that she used to spend with kid stuff.
I tangented onto that, but I want to come back, and I made a reference to empty nesters. At a certain point, the two of you encountered each other, and there's a reason we're having this conversation together. And it's not just the fact that you're both successful partners at Gordon Rees. It's because you also live together.
We do. We are married. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I'd been at Gordon Rees for 10, 12 years. You'd been at Gordon Rees for 7 or 8 or so. And, we're going to, I'm in San Francisco. She's in the LA office. We're going to partnership retreats in Yountville, and we meet each other and, become friends. And
I remember it was my first partnership retreat because I had just been elevated. And I remember meeting Mike for the first time because Mike was in charge of the entertainment / new partner hazing event /
karaoke,
which was karaoke. And so all the new partners had to pick a song and stand up and perform for the rest of the partners. And Mike was in charge of that. And he came up to me to introduce himself and ask me the song I was going to sing. And I told him, and he said, "No one's going to know that song, and it's not going to be in the book."
What was the song?
"You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You" by Dean Martin.
By Dean Martin, right. I'm like,
and I said, of course people know that song, and of course it's going to be in the book. And it was, and I sang it.
And she's an extraordinary singer. She has an incredible voice, and she killed it. And everybody did know it. And it was, the very first time of many that she was right and I was wrong. And the rest is kind of history. We kind of bonded over Tuolumne, where she was from. I learned that she was from Tuolumne, and I'd spent some time up there, and I was really into the outdoors and backpacking and stuff. And so before long, we're huddled over our phone, looking over maps of Tuolumne and where she lives. And so that was something that we had in common that I found very interesting in her upbringing and what she came from and that interest in the outdoors. And so that was something we had in common. And so we just became friends. And the next partnership retreat, we're friends again, and the next partnership retreat, it's nice to see each other, and it just kind of evolves, to where we're in love. I'm pretty sure we're in love and need to be together after a couple of partnership retreats where we would, stay in touch during the year and stuff and reconnect at the partnership retreat. And, ended up getting divorced from the folks we were married to at the time. Very okay divorces as far as divorces go for each of us, and people we still are friends with and respect, and got together. And she moved up from LA to San Francisco with her kids, with her 2 children, and I 2 children, and we became a family of 6, a blended family of 6.
You've moved your practice up to Northern California. You have come up with 2 kids. How old are your kids at this point, both of you?
We have a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, just turned 22, an almost 19-year-old, and an 18-year-old.
And at the time that you're getting together?
The 2 youngest were 6, and then the oldest were 9 and 10.
So that seems like a lot to bring together, as well as reestablishing a practice in Northern California. How does that evolve?
I actually think back, and I don't know. I really don't. I think it was just a lot of, putting one foot in front of the other every day. And we were and are so in love, and we really wanted it to be, we put so much effort into it. We wanted it to be everything that we had imagined it could be. And it was, but it was a lot of hard work. And, there's just been so many, moments over the past several years where I've stopped and reflected back about what things looked like the year prior. And I'm always surprised, kind of taken aback by it. Because when I moved up here, I was a junior partner. I had only been a partner for a couple of years. I was still learning what it meant to be a partner and responsible for your book and generating clients and running a business and also being a good lawyer. And I came from a place where I had tried a bunch of cases and I had a reputation. The judges knew me. In Los Angeles, if you're an employment lawyer, you practice in one courthouse primarily. Okay. And I knew that courthouse like the back of my hand. It felt like a home to me. So to come up here and to be in a lot of foreign places where nobody knew really who I was, especially at that time, where now you have a lot of lawyers who just practice across California. That really wasn't the case before COVID in the area of employment law anyways. So it was a lot.
I really do think it is the reason why she is where she is today is like a kind of a trite trial by fire thing. She had to start over while raising 4 kids in like a foreign land, somewhat hostile foreign land, start over professionally. And obviously we were starting as a family. And I think there's a reason why over the course of 12 years, she not only, reestablished her practice, but then, rocketed right past me to where she's an equity partner now and taking over Northern California. And I don't think you get there unless you're like need to fight for survival like she had to, I'm sure it's like being in that crucible that caused her to be as successful as she is.
I would not have been able to achieve what I achieved without an excellent partner. And we all know as lawyers how important it is to have a good partner. But, not just a law partner, but my life partner. Well, you know this, you live this. And if I hadn't, in the absence of that, I never would have achieved what I've achieved.
A question that I was going to ask related to any learnings that you might have to share in terms of breaking into a new area. And the reason I say this is, while it is not common, on occasion now, lawyers do have to move. And anything that you found that was particularly helpful in terms of whether it be networking or showing up in court or what have you, in terms of redeveloping your roots in a new space?
I think the way I would answer it is we did attend a lot of a sort of localized San Francisco bar events. Mike was already very involved in a lot of organizations, and
that's true. You would come to a lot of stuff with me, right? We'd go to the USF Inn of Court, and she'd come, and other stuff, that groups that I was in, that you would come, and
and I met a lot of judges that way. But this all kind of goes back to something that I learned from my mentor, Steve Ronk, which is this job is a relationship job. You have to build relationships with people to be a good litigator. It's not just it's not about fighting. It's about having a relationship with all of those people, even your adversaries and the judge and the clerk and whoever. And so I knew it was important. If I was going to be successful, I knew it was important for me to develop these relationships with our San Francisco partners, who I did not necessarily know a lot of them, right? Before moving up from our Los Angeles office, and establishing relationships with our associates and going to all of those social events, and then, going to court and going out of my way to meet people and to introduce myself.
From your perspective, Mike, any observations beyond what Mollie talked about that you felt were ways that she nailed it?
Yeah, she's exceptional at relationships. I mean, she makes all her clients feel like they're the most important client. I mean, she's a kind of person that, and I've never been this way. And again, it's the reason why she's successful as she has been. If the phone would ring at the dinner table and it's a client, she's going to take the call. My phone rings at the dinner table, I ignore it. And so I think when you approach all your relationships like that, it bears fruit, and so because she had that skill set, I just think it may have been easier for her than some people to reestablish herself, because she just has that real expertise at relationships, making people feel important and valued.
I did maintain a lot of my client relationships in Southern California, and these are clients that are still my client today. And I did, for those first few years, I did go down to Los Angeles and try cases and handle arbitrations. And I still go down quite a bit. But that was also, part of what I was doing during that time to further grow my business.
Meanwhile, we're raising these 4 kids.
That was where I was going to go
together.
Next.
We were just because of our anniversary, I guess we've been doing some reflecting, and we just spent the weekend at our place in Tuolumne, where Mollie's from. We have a house on the street that she grew up on now, with her parents living next door, and we just spent the weekend up there. And we, got there at 9:00, and we're exhausted, and poured a tequila, and we were like, if this were 5 years ago, you'd be making dinner right now, and I'd be laying out everybody's ski equipment in piles for the next morning, so they all had their gloves, and they all had their socks, and they all had their hats, because 8-year-olds can't find their old gloves or socks or whatever. So I'd be laying out the piles of ski stuff, and we'd be up the next morning at 6 a.m. heading up to Dodge Ridge to go skiing and make sure they had we wanted them to have a full life of experiences. And so we would, working as hard as we were working, we would then come home and do a lot of that stuff. It was really important to us, and it seems impossible now.
Yeah.
I don't know if just because I'm 2 years away from 60 and I'm just old and tired now or what, but it doesn't, we did do it.
And it didn't seem that exhausting at the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know how. I don't know how. I mean, we would leave We, for a while, got into going to Mount Bachelor and Bend skiing. I ended up liking that better than Tahoe or Dodge or anything, and the whole vibe there in Bend. And that's it's better if you do that drive in two hunks. And so we get three times every winter, 2 times every winter at least. We would take the drive up to Bend, and we'd leave on a Thursday or something, drive up to Weed, spend the night at the High-Low Motel, get there at 9 at night, spend the night at the High-Low Motel, which the kids loved. Dumpy little place in Weed.
Excellent hot chocolate.
Excellent hot chocolate. And we'd get up the next morning I'd get everybody up the next morning at 4 a.m. because back then I read in the Chronicle outdoor section, Tom Steinstra, about where you could go just across the border into Oregon and see bald eagles. He wrote about how there was this old growth redwood forest just across the border in Oregon. And if you drove through the town of Doris, across the border, across the train tracks, make your first left at the grain silo after the train tracks, drive a quarter mile down that road and park. And if you parked there at 5 a.m., between 5 and 6 a.m., 200 bald eagles would fly right over your head.
Wow.
As they were heading from where they slept at night in the old growth forest to the Tuolumne Wildlife Preserve, where they would get their fish and their birds and stuff. And so, our kids were game, I guess, for this. I don't know, but
I don't remember twisting any arms.
Wake them up at 4:30. We'd put all our winter stuff on, because again, it's winter. Put all our winter stuff on, drive over there, watch the bald eagles, drive back into California, go to the Tuolumne Wildlife Preserve, so that we could see bald eagles literally sitting on the ground eating a bird that they had caught or something 10 feet from the car.
Wow.
And there was Lava Beds National Monument there. And for a couple of those trips, we would then go to Lava Beds National Monument and be the only people there. And we would put our flashlights on and we would go down in these lava tube caves. They have lava tube caves there that are 20 to 40 feet big, and some of them go for a mile. You can just walk right in. They don't lock them up or anything. And we'd have our headlights on and we'd go walking around in these caves. And then we'd finally get in the car at 10 a.m. and drive the rest of the way to Bend and ski the 3-day President's Weekend or whatever and drive 8 hours home and go to work and be in court on Monday. And it seems impossible. I don't know how we did it, but we did that for 10 years.
What I'm hearing, and it's neat to hear, is that one can have a successful practice and be a successful parent.
100%.
Definitely. But we both ended up, I think, relatively successful, and we put a lot of emphasis on the family stuff. And it does take, obviously, a partnership. You really have to, back each other up, and be willing to do anything that needs doing.
100%. It's not achievable without that.
I know that you, and we're going to get there in terms of talking about the trial that you did together. I know that you are thinking partners on occasion for each other, but you also have, for the most part, you have independent cases.
Yeah.
We do. We have a lot of cross-pollination though between our books,
Okay.
right? So, if I have a client who, has a case that needs to be tried, brand new case in the door that needs to be tried, I'm going to turn to Mike and say, "Oh, I've got something for you." Okay. When Mike's clients have wage and hour, class action cases, complex litigation, PAGA representative actions, he sends them over to me because he hates that stuff. And I really enjoy those cases. And so we do a lot of that back and forth.
And part of my reason for laying foundation, to use lawyers, have there been points where you've both been headed out to trial at the same time with, 4 youngish, middle-ish ones in the house on the management, child management, household management, as well as practice management? How have you fielded that?
Yeah, we did. We did have to do that a couple of times,
including but not limited to the one trial we actually tried together. But there were still a couple other times.
Yeah, and when they were younger, I had a trial in Santa Barbara last year, in 24, and I was there for a month, and Mike was also in an arbitration at the time. He actually came down and helped me pick the jury.
Pick your jury.
But at that time, we had 2 teenagers, so it was a little bit easier to manage. But early on in our relationship, there were a couple of times when we were both in trial.
But then other times, at least one of us had something going on that was local.
Okay.
So if you had the nanny hang out longer till I could get back at 7 p.m., at least somebody could be back.
Yeah.
But and the case that we tried together was in San Francisco, so we could both get back by 7 o'clock, even though we're trying a case together, we could get home.
And that was fun. When you gave that closing argument, 2 of our kids
neat.
came to watch.
Thank you for listening. And please join us next week as we continue this conversation. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.